Before he became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, before the global fame, the blockbuster roles, and the billion-dollar businesses, Dwayne Douglas Johnson was just a kid trying to find his place in a world that often seemed stacked against him. His story begins not in the bright lights of Los Angeles or the roar of WrestleMania crowds, but in the shadows of hardship, uncertainty, and a family legacy that was both a blessing and a burden. Born on May 2, 1972, in Hayward, California, Dwayne came into the world already tethered to the larger-than-life world of professional wrestling. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a trailblazer in the sport, a charismatic Canadian wrestler who became one half of the first black tag team to win the WWE World Tag Team Championship. His maternal grandfather, Peter Maivia, was a revered Samoan wrestler, known not only for his ferocity in the ring but also for his presence as a cultural figure among Pacific Islanders. To the outside world, young Dwayne seemed destined for greatness. Wrestling ran in his blood, and the family name carried weight in locker rooms across the world. But behind the curtain, life wasn't glamorous. Wrestling in the 1970s and 80s was far from the corporate juggernaut it is today. Wrestlers often lived paycheck to paycheck, traveling from one small venue to another, relying on the next show to keep food on the table. For the Johnson family, financial stability was fleeting, and the lifestyle meant constant uprooting. Dwayne would grow up moving across states, from California to Hawaii to Pennsylvania, rarely staying in one place long enough to call it home. By the time he was a teenager, he had lived in 13 different states. Each move came with the same struggles, trying to fit in, trying to find friends, and sometimes finding trouble instead. Dwayne has spoken candidly about how chaotic those years were. His father's wrestling schedule meant he was often away, while his mother tried to hold the family together. Money was tight, bills piled up, and the family lived on the edge of poverty. At one point, when Dwayne was just 14, he came home to find a padlock on the door. His family had been evicted. It was a defining moment, seared into his memory, when he realized how fragile security could be. Those experiences hardened. As he grew older, he carried himself with a mix of determination and aggression. By high school, Dwayne was already a physical presence, standing 6'4" and weighing over 200 pounds before most of his peers had finished puberty. But being big didn't mean he had life figured out. He got into fights, ran with the wrong crowd, and even had a few run-ins with the law. At 16, he was arrested for theft after being caught writing bad checks and stealing. For a young man trying to find stability, it seemed like he was veering dangerously close to throwing away his future. But then, something clicked. Around the same time, he discovered an outlet for all his energy and frustration: football. At Freedom High School in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, he found himself drawn to the field, where his size and athleticism gave him a natural edge. Football became a lifeline, a place where he could channel his aggression into something productive, something that gave him structure and purpose. It was also the first time he began to see a path toward something greater, a way to escape the instability that had defined his childhood. Football carried him further than he could have imagined. His talent and discipline caught the attention of scouts, and soon he earned a scholarship to play for one of the top college football programs in the nation, the University of Miami. For a kid who had faced eviction and humiliation, walking onto that field was nothing short of a dream. He joined the Hurricanes in the early 1990s, a team stacked with talent, destined to become national champions. Surrounded by future NFL legends like Warren Sapp and Ray Lewis, Dwayne was thrust into an environment of excellence and pressure. At Miami, he played defensive tackle and quickly earned respect for his work ethic. He wasn't the biggest star on the roster, but he was known for his grit, his leadership, and his ability to push through pain. In 1991, the Hurricanes won the national championship, and Dwayne was part of the glory. For a brief moment, it looked like his NFL dreams were within reach. The boy who once couldn't afford rent was now staring at a future of professional sports stardom, wealth, and stability. But life had other plans. In his senior year, injuries began to derail. He tore up his shoulder, underwent surgery, and watched as younger, faster players took his spot. His NFL dream started to slip away, and when draft day came, his name was never called. He tried to keep the dream alive, signing with the Calgary Stampeders in the Canadian Football League. But even that was short-lived. After just 2 months, he was cut from the team. It was a crushing blow. At just 23 years old, Dwayne's dreams of being a football star had evaporated. He was broke, living in a small apartment, and at one point, he had just $7 left in his pocket. $7, that was the sum total of his life savings. He has often described this period as the lowest point of his life. For years, he had built his identity around football. It was his escape, his future, his way out, and now, it was gone. Depression set in. He spent days in his tiny apartment, unsure of what to do next, unsure if he had failed his family, and unsure if he even had the strength to try again. But within that despair, something began to stir. Dwayne has spoken about how, in that moment, he made a decision. He wasn't going to let failure define it. With nowhere else to go, he turned back to the one thing that had always been in his blood, wrestling. It wasn't his first choice. In fact, at one point, he had sworn to himself he would never step into the ring. He didn't want to live in his father's shadow, didn't want to inherit the struggles that had plagued his family for decades. But when life left him no other option, he reconsidered. His father, Rocky Johnson, initially resisted the idea. He knew the hardships of the business and didn't want his son to endure the same struggles. But eventually, he agreed to train him. And in that broken moment, with nothing but $7 to his name, Dwayne Johnson began to forge the path that would transform him from a failed football player into one of the most recognizable figures in the world. The journey wasn't glamorous. It started in dingy gyms, small wrestling promotions, long road trips, and low-paying gigs. But Dwayne carried something with him that made him different: the memory of eviction notices, the sting of failure, and the humiliation of being cut. Those struggles had lit a fire in him, a relentless drive to succeed, no matter how many times life knocked him down. In hindsight, those early struggles weren't just obstacles, they were the crucible that forged the Rock. When Dwayne Johnson's football dreams were crushed, he was left with nothing but a broken spirit, $7 in his pocket, and the faint echo of a family legacy that he wasn't sure he could live up to. His father, Rocky Johnson, and his grandfather, Peter Maivia, were both respected professional wrestlers. But stepping into that world wasn't as simple as inheriting the name. Wrestling is not only a grueling physical spectacle, it's a brutal test of charisma, timing, storytelling, and survival. Dwayne decided to give it a shot, training under the guidance of his father, learning how to bump, run the ropes, and master the psychology of the business. Every move hurt. Every practice session left him battered. But there was something inside him, a fire that wouldn't die, and he pushed forward. By 1996, Vince McMahon and the WWF were ready to give him a shot. With his impressive size, undeniable athleticism, and glowing heritage, he was packaged as the smiling babyface Rocky Maivia, a combination of his father's and grandfather's names. He was introduced as the Blue Chipper, the bright young star destined to carry the company into the future. On paper, it should have worked, but in reality, it backfired. Fans in the notoriously tough WWF crowds didn't buy into the squeaky clean, ever-smiling Rocky Maivia. His colorful ring gear, upbeat attitude, and forced character felt fake. Soon, chants of "Die, Rocky, die," and "Rocky sucks" echoed through arenas. For many young talents, this would have been the end. Careers die quickly in wrestling when the fans reject you. But Dwayne Johnson had a gift. He had something most didn't: the ability to adapt. He understood that he couldn't fight against the crowd. Instead, he leaned into their hatred, turned it into fuel, and reinvented himself. Rocky Maivia was dead, The Rock was born. No longer the smiling rookie, he became arrogant, cocky, and brimming with swagger. He joined the Nation of Domination, cut vicious promos, and strutted around the ring with supreme confidence. He spoke about himself in the third person, The Rock says, and delivered catchphrases that were so outrageous, so entertaining, that fans couldn't help but cheer. The transformation was meteoric. By the late 1990s, The Rock wasn't just another wrestler, he was a cultural force. His feuds with Stone Cold Steve Austin defined an era. Their rivalry at WrestleMania 15, 17, and 19 became legendary, not just because of the in-ring action, but because of the electric charisma both men brought to the microphone. The Rock also clashed with Triple H, The Undertaker, Kurt Angle, and countless others, each feud raising his profile higher. His promo skills were unmatched. While other wrestlers memorized scripts, The Rock could grab a microphone, riff on the spot, and have an entire arena chanting along within seconds. "If ya smell what The Rock is cooking" became one of the most recognizable catchphrases in pop culture. The Rock wasn't just big in wrestling, he was transcending. His eyebrow raise, his catchphrases, and his over-the-top theatrics began appearing on late-night shows, in commercials, and in mainstream conversation. He became the crossover star Vince McMahon always dreamed of, appealing not just to hardcore wrestling fans but to the general public. By the early 2000s, The Rock was the guy. He held multiple championships, headlined pay-per-views, and helped usher in the WWF's Attitude Era, one of the most successful periods in wrestling history. But perhaps most importantly, The Rock proved something to himself. When fans told him to quit, he reinvented. When they booed him out of buildings, he found a way to make them cheer louder than ever before. His journey through wrestling wasn't just about winning matches, it was about learning the art of resilience. The same adaptability that saved his wrestling career would later fuel his rise to Hollywood superstardom. The Rock was no longer the man who had been rejected by football. He was no longer Rocky Maivia. He was The Rock, the people's champion, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. And with the world now watching, he was just getting started. When Dwayne Johnson made the bold decision to step away from the wrestling ring and set his sights on Hollywood, many thought it was career suicide. Wrestling fans saw him as a larger-than-life superstar, but Hollywood is ruthless, especially to athletes trying to cross over into acting. Johnson had been The Rock, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, but in the film industry, he was just another rookie trying to carve out space in a saturated world. His first taste of Hollywood came in 2001, when he appeared as the Scorpion King in The Mummy Returns. The role was brief, but his magnetic screen presence was undeniable. The movie was a massive success, and though his CGI counterpart in the climactic battle was widely mocked for its poor effects, audiences couldn't ignore the raw charisma Johnson brought to the screen. That cameo led to his first starring role in The Scorpion King, 2002. For the first time, The Rock wasn't just a wrestler dabbling in film, he was headlining a Hollywood blockbuster. The movie grossed nearly $180 million worldwide, and for a moment, it looked like Johnson's gamble might pay off immediately. But Hollywood's success isn't about one movie. After The Scorpion King, Johnson found himself pigeonholed. He was cast repeatedly as the tough, muscle-bound action guy, the stereotypical warrior, mercenary, or bodyguard. His early roles in Walking Tall and The Rundown had flashes of his charm, but they weren't enough to break him out of the typecasting mold. Hollywood didn't know how to use him. Was he the next Schwarzenegger, or was he a novelty act from the wrestling world? The industry wasn't sure, and that uncertainty slowed his momentum. Then came a string of films that nearly derailed his credibility as a serious actor. Johnson began appearing in family-friendly comedies, hoping to expand his range and show versatility. Films like The Game Plan, 2007, and Tooth Fairy, 2010, were box office performers but critical embarrassments. The image of The Rock, once feared and adored in wrestling arenas, now prancing around in a tutu as the Tooth Fairy, was used by critics as proof that he had lost his ed. Commentators began questioning whether he had any staying power in Hollywood at all. Was he destined to be remembered as just another wrestler-turned-actor who never quite made it? Behind the scenes, Johnson was wrestling with this identity crisis. He had built himself into a global brand in WWE, cocky, confident, unbreakable, but in Hollywood, he was learning humility all over again. The constant rejection, the skepticism from executives, and the difficulty in shedding the wrestler label wore on. Yet this period of early failures was crucial to his reinvention. Johnson began studying Hollywood not just as an actor, but as a businessman. He observed how franchises worked, how branding extended beyond the screen, and how some stars managed to keep themselves relevant for decades. Slowly, he started making calculated career decisions that would reshape his path entirely. One of the most important shifts came when he embraced action franchises. Rather than running from his larger-than-life persona, Johnson leaned into it, but with a modern twist. His breakout Hollywood moment came with Fast 5 in 2011, where he debuted as federal agent Luke Hobbs. The movie didn't just reignite the Fast Furious franchise, it completely rebranded Johnson as Hollywood's go-to action megastar. For the first time, audiences saw him not as a wrestler trying to act, but as a legitimate box office force. He had bridged the gap between wrestling and film in a way no one had done before. But before that reinvention could happen, Johnson had to endure years of being underestimated. He had to take roles that hurt his pride, read reviews that dismissed him, and walk into auditions where executives didn't take him seriously. These early failures, the awkward comedies, the typecasting, the criticism, were the growing pains that prepared him for his eventual rise. They forced him to reflect, adapt, and double down on his work ethic. If wrestling taught him how to entertain a live crowd, Hollywood taught him patience and strategy. And it was those lessons that set the stage for the global takeover that was about to follow. When Dwayne Johnson made the decision to leave wrestling behind for Hollywood, many doubted. For years, critics labeled him as just another wrestler trying to act. But what followed was one of the greatest reinventions in modern entertainment history. And it all began with one bold move that would change not only Johnson's career but also reshape the very fabric of blockbuster cinema. The turning point came with the Fast Furious franchise. Johnson joined the series in Fast 5 as Luke Hobbs, an unstoppable federal agent. His introduction wasn't just another character addition, it was a cultural reset for the franchise. Fans and critics alike credited him with breathing new life into a series that was starting to lose momentum. His chemistry with Van Diesel, their on-screen tension, and his sheer physical presence turned Hobbs into an instant fan favorite. By the time Fast Furious 6 and Furious 7 rolled around, The Rock wasn't just a part of the cast, he was the reason millions were buying tickets. He had cemented himself as an action superstar on the same level as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, but with a modern twist, charisma, relatability, and business savvy. But Dwayne Johnson didn't stop there. He knew Hollywood was filled with action stars who came and went. He didn't want to be another name that burned bright and faded. Instead, he chose reinvention. He balanced his action-packed image with family-friendly comedies and adventure films. Movies like Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle and Central Intelligence allowed him to flex his comedic timing and show audiences that he wasn't just about big muscles and explosions, he had humor, heart, and versatility. Jumanji in particular was a gamble. Reviving a beloved 90s classic could have backfired. Instead, it became a billion-dollar global success, with Johnson at the center, proving that he wasn't just a blockbuster actor, he was a brand audiences trusted. And Johnson wasn't content to stop at acting. He was building something bigger, a global empire. He launched $7 Productions, named after the mere $7 he had in his pocket after being cut from the CFL years earlier. Through this company, he produced films, TV shows, and documentaries, giving him creative control over his projects and extending his influence far beyond the screen. His business ventures expanded further with Project Rock, a partnership with Under Armour that created fitness gear and apparel inspired by Johnson's relentless training and motivational ethos. Fans didn't just buy his products because they were stylish, they bought into the mindset, the idea of outworking everyone and pushing past limits. Then came Teremana Tequila, another massive success. While many celebrities launched liquor brands, Johnson approached it differently. He positioned Teremana not as a luxury product, but as something approachable, crafted with care, and tied to his personal story. It resonated with fans, turning it into one of the fastest-growing tequila brands in the world. But perhaps one of Johnson's most powerful tools was his mastery of social media. Long before many celebrities realized the power of Instagram and Twitter, Johnson was already using these platforms as direct connections to his fans. He posted motivational videos from the gym, behind-the-scenes looks at his film sets, and personal reflections about his struggles and triumphs. He spoke openly about mental health, about failure, about resilience. This authenticity created a bond between Johnson and his audience that few celebrities could match. He didn't just have fans, he had a global community that felt personally connected to it. By the mid-2010s, Dwayne Johnson wasn't just an actor or a former wrestler. He was a global brand. His movies consistently dominated the box office. His businesses thrived. His social media reach was unparalleled, making him one of the most followed celebrities in the world. Forbes even named him the highest-paid actor multiple times, highlighting not just his on-screen success but his off-screen empire. And yet, what made this reinvention so powerful wasn't just money or fame. It was the fact that Johnson had built everything on a foundation of resilience. From eviction notices to failed football dreams, from being booed as Rocky Maivia to critics doubting his Hollywood future, every setback became fuel. Reinvention wasn't just a career strategy. For Dwayne Johnson, it was survival. This period of his life marked his transformation from The Rock, the larger-than-life wrestler, to Dwayne Johnson, the global icon. And with every new venture, every box office hit, and every motivational post, he proved that he wasn't just playing the role of the world's hardest worker. He was the world's hardest worker. And the world was watching. Dwayne "The Rock" The Johnson's life story doesn't read like a conventional Hollywood success, it reads like a myth in motion, the kind of modern fable that blends grit, heartbreak, reinvention, and an almost supernatural level of discipline. By the time the 2010s closed, Johnson had transcended the labels of former wrestler or action star. He had carved out a new archetype, the entertainer businessman philanthropist who understood that celebrity wasn't just about roles or matches, but about commanding culture itself. His legacy is not simply about the billions his movies have grossed or the millions he's earned. It's about how he's redefined what it means to climb from nothing to everything while never losing sight of the people watching it. When fans call him the hardest working man in Hollywood, it's not just flattery. Johnson has embodied that title through a punishing routine of dawn workouts, grueling film schedules, business ventures, and promotional tours. His alarm clock, as he often shares, rings at 4 a.m. while the rest of the world sleeps. While many celebrities use the term grind as a cliché, Johnson turns it into a performance art. He shares his sweat-drenched gym videos, his Iron Paradise workouts, his cheat meals stacked with pancakes and sushi, not as flexes, but as motivation. His life has become a reality show without the cameras, where every moment is a demonstration of consistency. For millions of fans, Johnson is living proof that hard work can turn even the lowest point, being broke at 23, into the kind of success that dominates Forbes lists year after year. Financially, Johnson's rise has been nothing short of staggering. Multiple years running, he has topped the Forbes list of Hollywood's highest-paid actors, with annual earnings soaring well over $80 million. What's remarkable, though, is how diversified his empire is. Films alone don't define it. His Teremana Tequila brand quickly became one of the fastest-growing celebrity spirit ventures in history, raking in sales that put him shoulder to shoulder with George Clooney's Casamigos' success. Project Rock, his partnership with Under Armour, has turned him into a fitness and lifestyle mogul, with his bull logo becoming instantly recognizable around the world. Beyond that, he's a producer with his company $7 Productions, named for the literal $7 he had left after his football dreams collapsed, crafting blockbuster films and television projects. Every business venture has a story attached, a myth-making element that folds neatly back into his narrative of resilience. But legacy isn't built only on numbers. For Johnson, the true currency of fame has been his relatability. In an era where celebrities often feel detached, his authenticity has been his most marketable trait. He constantly refers back to his humble beginnings, the eviction notices on his family's door, the anxiety of watching his parents struggle. He tells his audience, "I've been where you are. I know what it feels like to be broke, lost, hopeless. But you can climb out." In a world that often doubts the sincerity of Hollywood stars, Johnson has mastered the art of making fans feel seen. That's why millions tune into his Instagram posts not just for entertainment, but for inspiration. He doesn't present himself as untouchable, he presents himself as proof of possibility. Culturally, The Rock has become more than just an entertainer, he's a touchstone of resilience. When you mention him in conversation, he isn't just categorized alongside action stars like Schwarzenegger or Stallone. He's viewed as a symbol of reinvention itself. His journey from rejected football player to wrestling icon, from failed early Hollywood roles to the king of blockbusters, isn't just career progression, it's a cycle of falling and rising, of using failure as fuel. For many fans, especially young men who grew up idolizing him in wrestling and later followed him into Hollywood, Johnson is a blueprint, someone who proves that it doesn't matter where you start, it matters how many times you're willing to get back up. And yet, his legacy has another dimension: family. Despite his image as an unstoppable force, Johnson makes a point of sharing his life as a father and husband. Videos of him singing to his young daughters, his heartfelt tributes to his late father Rocky Johnson, and his open discussions about gratitude remind audiences that even global icons are anchored by human relationships. In this sense, Johnson balances the paradox of being both larger than life and profoundly down-to-earth. His family stories don't weaken his brand, they reinforce it, showing fans that strength isn't just about lifting weights or starring in films, but about showing up for the people who matter most. Of course, with immense fame comes speculation about the future. For years, rumors have swirled about Johnson's potential run for political office. Polls have even suggested that he would be a viable candidate should he ever throw his name into the ring. Johnson himself has kept these discussions vague, neither confirming nor fully denying interest. What's undeniable, though, is that his public persona, equal parts charismatic, disciplined, and empathetic, feels tailor-made for the political stakes. Whether he ever makes that leap remains to be seen, but the fact that millions of fans could imagine him as a global leader underscores just how deeply he has embedded himself into cultural consciousness. As his career moves into its third decade, the larger question emerges: is The Rock just an action star, or something far more enduring? Action stars come and go, often tied to a single era or aesthetic. But Johnson has avoided that trap by constantly reinventing himself. He has navigated comedy, drama, family films, action franchises, and entrepreneurial ventures, never allowing himself to be boxed into a single identity. In that way, he mirrors the very philosophy he lives by: evolution is survival. Just as in the wrestling ring he transformed from the rejected Rocky Maivia into the beloved Rock, in Hollywood he evolved from a struggling wrestler-turned-actor into the world's most bankable star. Reinvention isn't a trick for him, it's his very essence. So what is Dwayne Johnson's legacy? It's layered. He is remembered as the WWE icon who electrified millions with his catchphrases and rivalries. He is celebrated as the action star who headlined some of the biggest franchises of the 21st century. He is admired as the entrepreneur who turned tequila and fitness gear into global empires. But above all, he is respected as the man who refused to let failure define him. His story isn't just entertainment, it's a survival guide, a testament to what can happen when discipline meets vision. And perhaps that's why Johnson's story resonates across generations. For kids, he's the fun, smiling powerhouse from Jumanji. For wrestling fans, he's the legend who electrified arenas. For entrepreneurs, he's proof that storytelling and branding can build empires. For those struggling, he's the reminder that even at rock bottom, literally with only $7 to your name, you can rise again. His legacy is not about a single role, a single match, or a single business. It's about the way he embodies perseverance itself. As the credits roll on Dwayne Johnson's journey, though, in truth, his story is far from over, the enduring image is clear, not just The Rock raising his eyebrow in the wrestling ring, not just Hobbs tearing through the Fast Furious universe, but a man standing as a global symbol of possibility. Whether you see him as an action star, a father, a businessman, or a potential political leader, one truth remains: Dwayne Johnson is more than a celebrity. He is a cultural icon whose journey has become part of our collective imagination. And perhaps the final, lingering question isn't whether he will fade or endure. It's this: in an age when celebrity often burns bright and then disappears, has The Rock shown us the ultimate secret, that reinvention isn't just a career move, but the very key to survive? If so, then Johnson's legacy is already secure, not as just another Hollywood star, but as a modern myth, living proof that no matter where you start, greatness is always possible.